I'm just gonna say it. I don't think Daniel Radcliffe did a very good job of portraying Harry Potter. And I want to qualify this, I don't think it was that much his fault. I think it was an issue of screenwriting and being a young and scared actor among tons of world-class actors. And it's really weird because I feel like I'm in the minority here when I say this, because I've been seeing a lot of memes and videos about how people will never accept the HBO version of Harry because they think that the movie version is perfect. But to be honest, I think the movies just botch a lot of the characters in the books. I think Snape is much, much meaner in the books. There's one section where he makes fun of Hermione's teeth and he is just nasty. I think Hermione is a lot more devilish. She actually keeps Rita Skeeter locked in a jar for a pretty long portion of time. I think Ron is a heck of a lot smarter, and don't even get me started on Dumbledore. And while I think Radcliffe did the best that he could at the moment with his portrayal of Harry, I think the differences between book and movie Harry are stark. Starting with maybe the one that fans are most salty over, Radcliffe is just not sassy enough. To be fair, I actually think he portrays sassiness really well in other films, but the writers just didn't give him a lot of the good lines that Harry has in the books that make you laugh out loud when you read them. When some friends of mine first read the books after watching the first movie, they were astonished at how funny Harry was in the books and how little that translated over to the films. Even in the initial pages, Harry has so many funny lines, and he is so sassy with his aunt and uncle to the extent that you think he might get in a lot of trouble for being so sassy. In a hilarious scene in the beginning, Harry walks downstairs and sees his aunt stirring something in a pot on the stove. She tells Harry that she's dyeing his school uniform for him for Stonewall High, and Harry hilariously says, "Oh, I didn't know they had to be so wet." In another scene, when Draco was mocking Harry about Quidditch, Harry's comeback, because Draco can't catch anything on the Quidditch pitch, was, "Pity you can't attach an extra arm to yours, Malfoy," said Harry. "Then it could catch the snitch for you," which is just an all-time comeback. In another moment with Draco, in Order, Draco says, "You see, I, unlike you, have been made a prefect, which means that I, unlike you, have the power to hand out punishments." To which Harry replies, "Yeah," said Harry, "but you, unlike me, are a git, so get out and leave us alone," which is just hilarious. And I could keep reading these lines, but I just want to give my favorite of all time. And it's a moment that Harry has with Snape. It's a conversation, and it goes like this. "Do you remember me telling you we are practicing nonverbal spells, Potter?" "Yes," said Harry stiffly. "Yes, sir." "There's no need to call me sir, Professor." And I know that some people think this is a minor point, but Harry's sassiness is what keeps you laughing during the books, and it's so entertaining. So when the movies took out all those lines, it was a massive disappointment. And again, I don't blame this on Radcliffe either, because in the lines where Radcliffe has sass, he kills it. But sassy Harry in the books is such a joy for anybody who's a reader. But I hope that whoever they cast as the new Harry in the HBO series has a ton of really great sass. Harry's demeanor has to do with his appearance, to be honest, and Radcliffe can't control that, so it's not really his fault. But book Harry was taller, a bit ganglier, and his hair was not really ever neatly combed. And most importantly, he has green eyes like his mother's, unless they were talking about the shape of his eyes when people would always say that he had his mother's eyes. And I think another thing that the movies kind of miss out on is how much of a leader Harry actually is, yet how unwilling he is to want to be a leader. Radcliffe, in his acting to me, just kind of went along with the flow. And I don't really know how to explain this one that much because I just think you need to read the books, but in the books, Harry wants nothing to do with the leadership that he's supposed to have. In the beginning of the books, people are intrigued with Harry just because he's Harry Potter. They don't really follow him because of any charisma or coolness that Harry has. He essentially has Ron and Hermione, but doesn't really have a following except for Colin Creevey. But one thing I love about this, that the books set him up to be a leader who was thrust into this role, even though he didn't want it. He's forced to be the leader of Dumbledore's army. He's forced to be the leader in the Horcrux hunt. But one of my favorite moments of all time is when Harry, deliberating between Horcruxes or Hallows in Shell Cottage, becomes a man and makes the decision he knows a good leader needs to make. That chapter still gives me the chills whenever I read it because you can sense the awe that Hermione in particular feels for Harry and how she is just in a weird way almost fearful of this change in Harry. He doesn't want this responsibility and then finally knows what he needs to do and grasps that like a real leader and a real man. And that is when he becomes a great leader because he doesn't really ever want to become a leader. The final point that I have is that Harry in the books is shockingly more compassionate than he is in the movies. There's one scene in the final duel with Voldemort where Voldemort doesn't just fade away after their duel, but Harry rather actually pleads with Voldemort to try for some remorse. It's Harry making a final plea for Voldemort to fix things, even though Voldemort killed so many people that he loves. Even in one of the more brutal moments in Harry's time at Hogwarts, when he uses Sectum Sempra against Draco, the movies don't really portray the sheer panic at what Harry's done. He actually falls on his knees to the side of Draco before Snape comes in and remedies the situation. But in one of the most compassionate moments in the books that the movies just miss out on because it's a scene where movie watchers won't even understand what's going on, is the silver hand of Wormtail. In book 3, when Harry shows compassion on Wormtail, there is this understanding that Dumbledore has that Wormtail now owes Harry some kind of life debt. Readers held on to this for dear life, wanting this and waiting for this life debt to be repaid. And it wasn't repaid in the next book when Wormtail is in the graveyard and sacrifices his hand to bring Voldemort back. Voldemort gives him a silver hand, but the debt isn't repaid in the 4th book. It's not repaid until the last book in Malfoy Manor. And rather than Dobby just hitting Wormtail in the back of the head and Wormtail falling down head first, Wormtail actually pins Harry to the ground. And these are the lines. Harry could barely breathe. "You're going to kill me?" Harry choked, attempting to prise off the metal fingers. "After I saved your life? You owe me, Wormtail." The fingers slackened. Harry had not expected it. He wrenched himself free, astonished, keeping his hand over Wormtail's mouth. He saw the rat-like man's small watery eyes widen with fear and surprise. He seemed just as shocked as Harry at what his hand had done, at the tiny, merciful impulse it had betrayed, and he continued to struggle more powerfully as though to undo the moment of weakness. Wandless, helpless, Pettigrew's pupils dilated in terror. His eyes had slid from Harry's face to something else. His own silver fingers were moving inexorably toward his own throat. "No!" Without pausing to think, Harry tried to drag back the hand, but there was no stopping it. The silver tool that Voldemort had given his most cowardly servant had turned upon its disarmed and useless owner. Pettigrew was reaping the rewards for his hesitation, his moment of pity. He was being strangled before their very eyes. Harry actually tries to save Wormtail again. This is astonishing, where he shows incredible kindness and compassion. This man who was responsible for his parents' death. Harry shows incredible compassion to the point that he tries to save his life, and I don't think the movies portrayed Harry's compassion very well. There's a whole heap of other things that I think make Harry better in the books versus the movie, and I, for one, am very excited about a new actor to play the role of Harry to see if he can nail some of the more subtle bits of what make Harry, Harry. But I'd love to hear from you. Do you love Radcliffe? Do you hate him? What else were some of the biggest book-to-movie changes in Harry's character? Let me know in the comments, and as always, make sure to like the video and subscribe to this channel if you want more Harry Potter and other nerdy content.